Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from FantasyFootballScout.co.uk. My name is David and today, of course, we're going to have a look at how my team got on in double game week 7 and what my plans are for game week 8 because, of course, once again, we are faced with another week defined by flags and injuries. There's yellow flags, orange flags, flags of all citrusy colours on the players who are highly owned, and there's going to be a lot of interest in those press conferences going into game week 8, and of course, you will also know that there are lots of wild cards flying about as well. You may have pulled the trigger on yours. You'll have noticed that Andy and Seb from the Scoutcast have pulled theirs. So if you want to see who's on their current drafts, go and watch the most recent episode of that. Joe is also on one as well, and of course, he's talked through it on the goals imminent episode we had on Tuesday as well. So there's lots of wild cards out there right now, and that can perhaps sometimes cause a little bit of pressure on yourself if you're not too sure what you're going to do, and you see a number of other wild cards. It perhaps gives you itchy fingers. Now, hopefully, my team selection video today is going to perhaps bring a bit of balance there. And I'm not suggesting, by the way, that wildcarding is a bad option, but it's not necessarily the right option for everybody's teams because it's always team dependent. And yeah, full disclosure up front right now, I'm not wildcarding for game week 8. I'm kind of unsure when I'm going to play that wildcard. I had been looking at game week 9, but I'm relatively happy that I can get to a team that I quite like for game week 9 or 10. And there's a possibility I might hold it for later on in the season. I've got 2 free transfers heading into Game Week 8 as well, which I do actually have to thank most of you guys for helping me with that on the deadline stream, and we'll get onto that in just a minute. So yeah, that's the current situation for my team. We'll look at it in a little bit more detail in just a second. But before we go any further, of course, it is my pleasure to remind you that the Fantasy Football Scout membership price is still 30% off with those pre-season prices, so make sure you get yourself sorted out with one of those before the Game Week 8 deadline, especially if you're on a wild card. It's just almost essential to have access to all of that information that you can customize, of course, as best as you'd like to have a look at it over the last 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, however you want to look at it. And yeah, that's going to be very helpful for you wildcarders, but also very helpful for those of you who are just using your free transfers this week as well. Now, I also have to thank you guys once again for nominating us for Best in Fantasy Football Editorial at the Football Content Awards 2023. We massively appreciate the support you guys have given us in that. If you'd like to vote for us to win this category, then there's information on how to do that in the description below. So go and check that out if that's something you'd like to do. And as I said, any support that we have with the Football Content Awards, we massively appreciate. It helps keep us going, and it helps us know that we are producing content for people who really enjoy what we do, which it just makes for a really nice, beneficial and happy cycle. So let's jump into my team then for double game week 7. How did it get on? Now, it's a little bit of a misnomer calling it a double game week 7 for me because I didn't have any double game week players, and that was something I largely had decided a number of weeks ago. I felt that there was a bit of a window of opportunity for Carlton Morris in those 4 games that he had between game weeks 5, 6 and 7. Of course, 4 games in those 3 game weeks. And yeah, I'm relatively happy that you guys got something if you went for Morris. I never quite had the opportunity to go for him. I was never all that enamoured. I felt there was an opportunity. If you go for it, it might come off. It did. It's nice to see that these underwhelming double game weeks sometimes don't necessarily always go the way of Emmanuel Dennis and Wout Weghorst. So well done to those guys who went in that direction. Now, as for me, a relatively interesting game week. As you can see on the screen, it did finally get me my first green arrow in 3 game weeks. Not a very big one. Only up by about 10k places, I think, from about 20k places, about 460k to 448k. But I had some big help here from a number of fortunate scenarios. So going into game week 7, I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do. I was thinking I could maybe sell Chilwell and get to an additional Newcastle defender in Dan Burn. And yeah, in the end, I was torn between that and rolling the transfer because I felt that I could probably just about start a decent team with Cash, Stupinian and Botman. It was really in defence that I was having decisions to make. And yeah, thank you very much to chat because I put up a poll. You guys said roll the transfer, so I started with Cash and Stupinian, which maybe was not as beneficial as it could have been in the sense that I did lose 2 points for Stupinian. But what it meant was, well, as I said, a lot of luck here. Botman then didn't play. Which was quite surprising. I'd seen a couple of accounts who sort of claimed to be in the knowledge about Newcastle. Perhaps maybe they weren't, suggesting he was going to start. He then didn't. So I felt very worried and very, well, basically naked without my Newcastle defender, knowing that some people have Burn, some people have Trippier. He was very, very nervous. Now, with Botman not playing at all, it meant that one Joachim Andersen came off my bench for 15 points, which in a week like this did actually make a big difference, because on Monday, after the Monday game, so after Chelsea and Fulham had finished their match, I was 917k. But then when my auto sub came in, that threw me up about 500k places, which, as I always keep saying at this stage of the season, you're only ever a differential haul away from perhaps half in your rank. And so I should just say the 917 was sort of a live rank. It was about 460k going into the game, as I said earlier. So I feel very fortunate about Anderson. That is the first time I've got one of his hauls this season. He has, of course, got quite a few of them, but they've always been when I've benched him, and largely when I've started him, he hasn't delivered. He has shown mercy on me this game week by hauling and coming in. And as I said, I do actually have Sven Botman to thank for that. But I do still kind of have a few problems. I'll just talk through the rest of the team. Saka got me the 9 points. The sight of him at Bournemouth helped me sort of realise, yeah, he's going to be involved, and that's what we want to see. And Burmo blanked again. Diaby got me 2 assists. Salah blanked, and nothing from Maddison either. Alvarez got a goal, and Haaland blanked as well, which is a bit annoying. So as I said, I got some problems because I've still got Chilwell on the bench with a red flag. I've got Botman with an orange flag, and then I've got Saka and Diaby also with yellow flags. And so in terms of what I do for this game week, this is what my team looks like before I've made any changes, or rather I've made some substitutions. Now you may be wondering why I have put Chilwell into the team. Well, that's because it is my intention to sell him and start whoever I replace him with. And so it just helps me realise that that's what I want to do. Now, as I said, my decisions are going to have to be, once again, dictated by those press conferences coming up in the next few days. I need more information on Diaby. I definitely need more information on Saka. We will see. But I've kind of got a loose plan of what I want to do at the moment. So I'll talk you through a few things first. If you haven't already seen the latest pieces of information on the injured players that you can see on the screen, the main ones that we've had some good lines on are Saka and Botman. So we'll start with Saka, and what's the latest on him? Well, of course, had this little injury, didn't train all that much ahead of the Bournemouth game, went to Bournemouth, started the game, got a goal, had to come off, and then was, a bit of a doubt for the Lens game. He then started the Lens game. Arsenal lost. Saka had to come off. He was struggling in about the 34th minute, I think it was. So that was an enforced substitution in line with this ongoing issue that he's got. And so the quote that we've had from Arteta is as follows. He tried to backheel a ball in the first half and felt something muscular. Alarm bells ringing when I hear the M word. He felt uncomfortable to carry on, so we had to take him off. It was big enough not to allow him to continue to play the game, and that's a worry for us. Now, what I'm seeing with the treatment of Saka, I feel is making me nervous long term. I think that Arsenal are in such a situation where they feel like they need to play him every game, perhaps even if he doesn't necessarily, or it shouldn't be. I was about to say he doesn't want to. I'm sure Bukayo Saka wants to play every game. We've seen this with Harry Kane before as well. What I can do can lead to a situation where you just overexert the player a bit too much, and then it causes them some issues longer term and perhaps rules them out for several weeks. And I'm kind of worried that that's maybe what might happen with Saka. But when I say worried, I'm not necessarily all that worried, because actually, if I'm honest, I love Saka. Big fan of his, both for club and for country. But it would be useful if he could be ruled out of Game Week 8, because there's one glaring omission from my team right now who I feel like I need for Game Week 8, and that is Son Heung-min. Now, if Saka is out, with the 2 free transfers, I can get to Son relatively painlessly, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But I'm going to update you on what my plans are for Botman, because I think I'm just going to leave Botman on my bench. Now, I don't think I'd start Botman in this game week anyway. I know Newcastle defence has been good, but the West Ham attack has also been very good as well. And I think Newcastle will win this game, but I do think that West Ham will probably find the net as well. Bowen and Ward-Prowse in particular have been in good goal-scoring form. So, the latest on Sven Botman is, and this is from Eddie Howe, Sven has got a knee problem. I don't think we'll see Sven before the international break, but hopefully we'll see him very quickly afterwards. So, of course, there is some doubt over whether or not he plays against West Ham. And if he does, as I said, I'm not expecting much from him. However, I do not want to jettison my current investment in the Newcastle defence. I kind of felt a little bit naked, as I said, not having a Newcastle defender for Game Week 7 in the end. I got lucky with Anderson coming in, but I can't bank on that happening every single week. So when this more challenging fixture for the Newcastle defence is out of the way, I'm going to want to have a Newcastle defender for Game Week 9 onwards. And if Botman recovers in line with Eddie Howe's current planned timeline, then hopefully I can just bring Botman back in. Chilwell, of course, is a much more urgent sell because he's seemingly out for a lot longer, got a bit more money tied up in him, and I'm much less interested in having a Chelsea player for reasons that I'm going to hope at this point are kind of obvious. So yeah, that's kind of my situation with those guys. And so yeah, I'm starting to have a think about what I could potentially do with those two free transfers, and I very much want to see if I can get to Son. Now, the unfortunate situation for me is that going from Saka to Son does involve downgrading somewhere else. I currently have nothing in the bank. If I take Saka out and replace him with Son, then it basically leaves me with about 1.7 that I have to find somewhere else. I think it was. And so, yeah, I've got to think about where I can downgrade. Now, obviously, Chilwell is the obvious choice there. And so, that's okay. If I sell Chilwell, then I need to buy someone who's 4.7 or less. That's kind of what my view is here. And so it's a bit frustrating because I wanted to maybe have a look at Destiny Udogie or Pedro Porro, but they're a little bit outside my price range at the moment. And so I'm kind of considering Van de Ven, which is a little bit underwhelming. But I was having a look at the fixtures over the next couple of weeks, and Spurs are, of course, top of the season ticker for fixture difficulty over the next 6. Now, I had a little bit of a look at how teams were getting on in terms of the ease of their defensive schedule, I'm kind of invested as much as I need to be anyway. So the top 4 teams for defensive difficulty over the next 4 includes Villa and Palace, and I have options for them already. Newcastle also up there as well. Wolves in there too, but that's probably going to be a rotation thing. I do think the next 2 matches Spurs have a good chance of a clean sheet. They haven't necessarily been one of the best defensive sides of late. So I've just got on the screen right now the best 6 sides for defensive potential over the last 4. So this is the teams that have conceded the fewest big chances. Spurs don't feature there. Now, they have played Liverpool, so maybe that's going to impact it in some way. They've also played against Arsenal, so I'd like to think the fact that they're not appearing in this phase of the table is perhaps just because they've had some difficult fixtures. When you consider that in their first 4, they kept 2 clean sheets. Bournemouth and Man United were the teams they kept out. Burnley and Brentford both found the net against them. I'd like to think against Luton and Fulham, 2 teams that have had relatively low XG creation over the last few weeks, that Spurs have a decent chance of keeping a clean sheet there. And I suppose just also looking at the teams that have good defensive potential over the next couple of weeks, I'm not interested in an Arsenal defender for this week because of Man City. And then they've actually got a couple of extra challenging games, Arsenal after that. Chelsea, whilst the defensive stats have been good, I just feel that they're unreliable. Brighton all of a sudden have managed to get back into this part of the table, despite the fact that they were in a really bad place for this of late, and then conceded 6 against Villa. You can see on the other screen, I've benched Stupinan for now. So yeah, that's kind of my thinking there. It's a bit underwhelming, but I feel like it's a good way of covering off where I'm a little bit short, which is a lot of people have Spurs defence, and I think that's a good option this particular week. So yeah, just going back to my Gameweek 8 bus team at the moment, what it means for the starting 11 elsewhere. I think I'm going to go for Turner over Flecken this week because Nottingham Forest defence has actually performed better than Brentford's over the last 4 in terms of the numbers it's allowed. Crystal Palace's XG is lower than Man United's XG is over the last 4 as well, and of course Eze potentially out for up to 6 weeks, which does also massively impact their goal threat. They really have suffered without Elise in the team, and so losing Eze as well, I'd like to think that there's a not out of this world chance that Forest do get a clean sheet. And as I've mentioned before, slightly losing my patience a little bit with the Brentford defence. The long-term injury to Rico Henry really is not very helpful there. Anderson has very much he's shown me mercy, and I must show myself worthy of it this week by starting him at home against Nottingham Forest. As you can see, I'm kind of hoping for a 0-0 there, but I don't think that's completely out of the realms of possibility. And Anderson always has the opportunity of popping up with attacking returns. If he does get something, it's great, even if it busts my Turner clean sheet, because to be honest, he's just a huge differential and is making a big impact. So that means a Stupinan on the bench alongside Botman. He's at home against Liverpool, and I do think that Liverpool are going to do quite well in this game based on how Brighton got against Villa, and that -2 has really sort of spooked me a little bit. So then it means Cash holds his place, of course, away against Wolves. I've talked about my views on Mbermo on another video on the channel, so rather than sort of waste your time here and have you listen to it all again if you've already checked it out, I'll push you in the direction of that video. Go and check that out for my views on him. Long story short, I'm going to give him another opportunity this week because some of the other issues in my team, I think, need a little bit more solutions, and also there's a couple of opportunities that I think are worth thinking about as well. Maddison, Diaby, it must be worth saying that I do need to keep an eye on what Emery says about Diaby. My plans may have to change if he's the one who is also looking doubtful as well. Salah stays in the team as well, and then, as I said, at the moment the bus team has Saka and Chilwell in it, but I'm expecting and hoping that enough happens in such a way that I can make my moves and move towards Son, fingers crossed. Alvarez and Haaland up front, I do think that they can be the difference against Arsenal, despite Arsenal's defence being quite good, because as we've seen over the last couple of years, Man City do know how to get the best out of Arsenal and get the FPL points to come along with it. Now, I may sound relatively confident in the decisions I want to make this week, but I have been exploring other ideas because I am fully appreciative of the fact that at the moment, who I'm seriously missing is Kieran Trippier. He has done very well in the last couple of game weeks. 18 points 2 game weeks ago, 12 points the most recent match. As I said, I do think that Newcastle's chance of a clean sheet is somewhat lower this week against West Ham than it is against some of their other opponents they've faced recently and some of the other opponents they're going to face in the future, in the near future. But Trippier really can rise above all of that quite nicely with his attacking potential. He has created more chances than any other defender so far this season. He's very much in a positive place for things like big chances created over the last 4 as well. So I'll stick that up on the screen as well. In the last 4 matches, 4 big chances created by Trippier, 7 by Salah. So he's second and behind only the Egyptian king for creativity. And of course, a lot of that comes from set pieces. And what we have seen in recent weeks is that he can do that against teams that are susceptible to that. And in the last 4 matches, West Ham are second worst for chances conceded from set pieces. Only Sheffield United have conceded more chances from set pieces than them. They've conceded 17 headers, have West Ham in that time as well. So only Burnley and Sheffield United have done worse there. So Trippier clearly has a fantastic matchup this week, and he's in like 40% of teams, and I don't have him. So I do have to investigate the possibility of ways that I can do that. And unfortunately, I'm kind of in a situation where I think I'm going to have to choose. It's either Son or Trippier. I can't really get to both unless I potentially do a -4, but then I do need some serious downgrading. So what I've stuck on the screen now is my transfer screen. If I tried to do Saka to Son and Chilwell to Trippier, and it leaves me short of 2.1 million, which is, of course, quite a lot. Now, what areas could I do to downgrade that? It's kind of hard, to be honest, because Alvarez, if I was to downgrade him, it's down to like a 4.5. Haaland going down, I'm not really in the no Haaland gang yet. I mean, maybe I end up there, I'm not sure, but I feel very, very naked without Haaland, even if I'm not going to captain him this week, which we'll get onto in just a second. Diaby downwards means I've got a 4.5 million striker and midfielder, the same for Mbeumo. Salah, I don't want to get rid of him. Maddison, I don't want to get rid of him either, because I think this is a good fixture to double up on Spurs, possibly even triple up on them as well. Cash, Estupiñán, Anderson and Botman, none of those guys can shave off 2.1 million, neither can Turner and Flecken. So the only place that I found that would allow me to still be doubled up on the Spurs attack and have Trippier would mean downgrading Son by signing Kulusevski instead. So I can, if I want to, if I feel more inclined to get Trippier, go Trippier instead of Van de Ven and go Kulusevski instead of Son. But the problem is that Son just looks so much more captainable this week than Kulusevski does. And, you know, to be honest, I think he looks more captainable, arguably, than Haaland as well. Now, Haaland obviously has been looking good over the last 4 matches. 16 shots in the box for him. So if any of you out there are thinking about moving him on, he's still had more shots in the box than any other player in the last 4. Son's had 11. In terms of the big chances, I mean, Son is still doing quite well. He's had 6. Haaland's had 10. And then in terms of shots on target, Haaland is also joint top for this, but Son is also joint top as well. So Son, Maddison and Haaland all top of the league for shots on target over the last 4. And you will, of course, have noticed, actually, that Kulusevski really not anywhere near the top on any of those tables you've seen on the screen. To compare Kulusevski and Son, so these are the decisions I've got to make. 11 shots in the box for Son last 4, 9 for Kulusevski. 6 big chances for Son, none for Kulusevski. 9 shots on target for Son and 2 for Kulusevski. Kulusevski has created more chances, 16 to Son's 3, but the XGI, again, it's just hugely in Son's favour, 3.22 for him and 1.18 for his midfield counterpart. So I wouldn't captain Kulusevski. I would captain Son. And yeah, it's very much the defensive side of things that has me wanting to captain Son. Luton, whilst they're not in the bottom 6 for XGC over the last 4, they are in a bad part of the table. They are in the bottom 6 across the season as a whole, and they've arguably had very favourable fixtures against very low XG creating teams in the last 4, whereas Man City, of course, have to go up against Arsenal. As I said, I think it's good enough to hold Haaland, but I don't think it's necessarily exciting enough fixture to captain him when it could have Son against Luton. It's an away game as well for Spurs, which actually I think is better for them because it'll be a little bit easier for them to sort of catch Luton on the counter-attack and pounce on some space that opens up a little bit. And I'm not necessarily all that confident that Luton is a team that can stick everyone behind the ball and actually wait things out in quite the same way that Sheffield United nearly succeeded in doing in that week where he did disappoint a lot of captainers. So that's kind of my thinking there. It's a decision of Son versus Trippier. And I think at the moment I'm edging towards Son for now, and I'll work out how to get Trippier later on. Perhaps on a wild card, maybe not going to rule that out. As I said, I don't want to use it in the next few weeks, but I'm not going to rule that out. I just think that there's a bigger upside for Son this week because of that captaincy. There may be some people that can't reach Son, for example, and so being able to captain someone who's not necessarily going to be in everybody's teams, I think is useful. It's a slightly more aggressive way to play it rather than covering off that defensive player who's in 40% of teams. I'm going to have a look at instead signing someone who is he's in 25% of teams, so he's not necessarily a nobody or a differential or anything, but is in fewer teams. Haaland's in 90% of teams, and captaining the guy who's not as owned by as many feels like an exciting opportunity in this particular week, and that's probably what I'm going to try and do. As I said, it still allows me to be invested in that Spurs defence as well, which I haven't really gone into too much detail here. I think that Van de Ven can get 6 points in the next 2 matches for Spurs, which will hopefully do enough to just sort of justify leaning into Son rather than Trippier. So that's mostly what I'm thinking there. But anything can change. As you will have noticed from last week's video, my plans ended up being just to do nothing because you guys provided some very helpful input in the end on the deadline stream, and I credit you for me having 2 free transfers this week because that's what's going to allow me to either get to Trippier or Son with those 2 free transfers without having to take a hit. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And, it's possible that the team news situation may fluctuate and change throughout the course of the week. Make sure you check out the team news video on Friday with Joe and Neil because I think it's going to be important again. We may get pieces of early information on Saturday because, of course, Luton v Spurs is actually the early kickoff as well. And, you never know what mood I might find myself in on the deadline stream. So all we want to caveat that with, these are my plans right now. They may change. We'll see how they go, and just stay tuned to our content to see how the landscape is going to shift. As I said, a lot of this information has come from the members area, so make sure you sign up ahead of Gameweek 8. It will massively help you, especially if you're on a wildcard. And with that, I shall leave you fine, folks, to enjoy the rest of your FPL tinkering, and I shall see you next time.